I chose the topic for tonight, saving our families. Because I'm concerned that although it was known throughout history that the basic strength of the Jewish people that kept us together and that enabled us to survive unbelievable ordeals was the solidarity of the Jewish family. And I think there is reason for concern that we are seeing signs of trouble. Now, I have no reason to think that Canada is any different than the United States, and that Toronto is any different than New York or Chicago. But at least back there in those cities, there has been an unprecedented number of failed marriages. Last week somebody quipped to me that there seems to be a new phenomenon called the 3-month marriage. Because within the last year there were 6 incidents of Orthodox families where they divorced after 3 months of marriage. It seems so bizarre. You don't even get to know anybody within 3 months. You don't even know whom you're divorcing. But whether it's 3 months or 2 years or 10 years, the fact is that divorce in the Jewish community was a rarity. And today it has become a quite frequent occurrence. And it's not only the tragedy that happens to that particular family, particularly to children who suffer from a breakup of a marriage, but I'm concerned that this is symptomatic of something. This is an indication that something is wrong within the Jewish community that is allowing this to occur. And so I was looking, could I put my finger on it? And it occurs to me that we have been influenced by Western culture. We've been influenced by the movies, by television, by the media. And we have a very strange, I shouldn't say strange, I think we have a rather unhealthy concept of what true love is about. I think what happens when young man and young woman come into marriage, and maybe it all started off with infatuation, which is fine, but I think each one is coming in with an agenda of expectations that they have from what they want this marriage to be. And I think there is a problem, because you see, if you've attended weddings and you've listened to the brachas that are recited during the chuppah, the very first bracha that is said after the ring is given, and now the couple are husband and wife, the very first bracha is Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. We praise Hashem, we praise God. Shehakol bara lichvodoi, who created everything for His glory. That's a beautiful bracha. But I wonder how many of us have thought when we heard that bracha, what is the relevance of that bracha to the wedding? Later on in the brachas, we talk about the chosn and the kalabo. This first bracha that our God created everything for His greater glory. What's that got to do with the wedding? And I think that the sages who instituted that bracha may have wanted us to know that the young man, the chosn, is coming in with his agenda of what his needs and wants are. The young woman is coming in with an agenda of what her needs and wants are. Those are two totally separate things. There's no common ground for the marriage. You know, I was once at the airport, and I was standing on the moving sidewalk, and there was a gentleman standing next to me, and parallel to this moving sidewalk was the moving sidewalk going to the other direction. And the gentleman who was standing next to me, who was an airline employee, noticed a buddy of his on the other walk, and he started to exchange a few words with him. But within a few moments, they couldn't converse anymore. Now, sometimes couples who have difficulty go to a marriage counselor, and they are told that their problem is that they don't communicate well. Now, that may be. But you see, these two people may have an excellent means of communication. The problem is that he was going in this direction, the other one was going in this direction, and because they were going in two different directions, they couldn't communicate if they tried to. And I began thinking, if a young man comes in to the wedding with his agenda, and the young woman comes in with her agenda, they may be going in two different directions. And no matter how good the communication can be, there can't really be a unity because there's two diverse directions. So I think that the sages wanted to tell us that both should come into the marriage with the conviction that they want to establish a family that is going to strengthen Judaism, that is going to bring honor to Hashem, to the greater glory of God. That's your mission, and that's your mission. You, my dear young man, you should be motivated by this. And you, my dear young woman, you should be motivated by this. It's a common ground. That's the foundation. You see, if each one comes in with their own agenda of what they want and what they need, and if anything happens that any of those wants and needs are frustrated, if that's the foundation of the marriage, then of course the marriage is going to be in trouble. But if the foundation of the marriage is not my wants and not my wants, the foundation of the marriage is to establish a family for the greater glory of Hashem, then both have a common ground. And even if there were to be differences, the differences can be dealt with. It doesn't attack the foundation of the marriage. And I think our young men and young women have to rethink as to what they want out of the marriage. As long as they're going for their own needs, there's two separate paths, and they can be divergent. And a divergence in marriage is not going to produce a unified marriage. So that's the first bracha. Then the next bracha is equally interesting. Baruch atah Hashem yotzech ha'odam. Blessed are you, God, who created man. Now that's a fine bracha. What's it got to do with the wedding? And not only that, but the bracha that follows that again ends up yotzech ha'odam. Two brachas telling us that God created man. Now, they're obviously giving us a message. You know, my father used to discipline me, and his favorite words of discipline were, sei a mensch. Yeah, be a mensch. What do you mean, be a mensch? Of course I'm a mensch, I'm a human being. But really, what is a human being? You know, if you go to school, and you go to biology class, you will be taught that a human being, scientifically, is Homo sapiens. Now that's a Latin term. And if you translate it into plain English, a Homo sapiens means he's a gorilla or an ape with intelligence. I refuse to consider myself an intellectual ape. Intellect is, of course, very valuable. But is intelligence the key and the definition of the human being? Do you know that before World War II, the most advanced intellectual country in the world was Germany? Clearly, they did not produce the finest human beings. So yes, intelligence is important, but that's not the definition of a human being. But I like to keep things simple. I say, okay, how would you define then, if not Homo sapiens, how would you define a human being as different from animals, from other forms of life? And I said to me, it seems to me very obvious. Animals are motivated totally by their physical drives, totally by their own wants. Animals are totally self-centered. Now, if you have a pet, and the pet picks up human traits, that's something else. But animals in the wild are totally self-centered. Now, before the speaker introduced the concept of chesed and the importance of Tomcha Shabbos and the work of chesed. Yes, chesed is the foundation of Jewishness. The Torah describes our forefather, the patriarch Abraham, right, as the pillar of chesed. Now, in the animal world, yes, a mother bear will take care of her cubs. That's an instinctual thing. But to do a chesed, to do a favor with self-sacrifice of one's belongings for a total stranger whom you don't know and never will see, that is a concept that is not known to the animal world. That is a human concept. We are capable of that. Humans have the ability to do chesed. And as was pointed out, we seem in Yiddishkeit, we seem to have an innate drive to do chesed. But chesed is something that separates us from animals. The self-centeredness for animals will drive them to do anything that will give them pleasure. Now, what's happened in the 21st century is that what is assumed to be the right of every person, of the pursuit of happiness, has been corrupted to the pursuit of pleasure. As though pleasure can give you happiness. Now, I've been around for a long time, and I've had, of course, 50 years of psychiatric practice, and I've seen many people who are discontented. And some people will put their finger on what the reason is for the discontent. If I had more money, I'd be happy. If I had a better job, I'd be happy. If my husband or my wife were more considerate to me, I'd be happy. If I could get rid of my arthritis, I'd be happy. If my daughter would do a shidduch, I'd be happy. I've seen people who had this idea of what's going to give them happiness, if only they had something that they were missing. And then when they get that something that's missing, they're still unhappy. And look, let me tell you something. Having physical pain is not good. I can attest to that. All right? I've got very painful condition of spinal stenosis, and it's a very unpleasant thing. But I don't think for one moment that if this is going to be cured, that I'm going to be happy. That's going to be, my happiness has to come from something else, not from relief of pain. Happiness has to come from something else other than a better job, other than more money. And we have to think as, what then is pursuit of happiness? We've got a problem, an epidemic problem among our young people who are going for drugs at an unprecedented rate. And now there's this whole movement to legalize marijuana. But young people are going for alcohol and for drugs, for marijuana, or for even the more heaviest and more serious drugs. Why? Because they're looking for pleasure. What's wrong with that? Everybody else is looking for pleasure. And we have to get off of the kick that pleasure is going to equal happiness. Pleasure is fine. I don't want to be deprived of it. I enjoy pleasant things, and I want you to enjoy pleasant things. But don't make the mistake that pleasure is going to give you happiness. And so let's take a look at what else is there that separates man from animals. Animals don't think of what the goal of their life is. I don't believe that any animal has ever thought about, what am I supposed to do in my existence? We have the ability to think, what do I want to do with my life? Now we have the ability, I'm not sure how often people use it. What do I want to accomplish my 90 years there and 100 years on this earth? That's a unique human ability. We have the ability to think about, what can I do to become a better person than I am? Now, I don't believe that any cow in the pasture has ever thought, what do I need to do to become a better cow? Animals don't think that way. Animals think only of gratifying their own physical needs. And I think that if we sink to that level, then we live at an animal level. You know, I was walking through the supermarket one day, and I noticed on the shelf there were cans of evaporated or condensed milk, the Carnation brand, and it advertises milk from contented cows. And I paused to think, why in the world should I care whether these cows were contented or not? But obviously, what the company is trying to tell me is that their brand of milk is superior to others. Why is it superior? Because it comes from the finest cows. Why are their cows the finest cows? Because they keep them contented. So the excellence of a cow is to be contented. And if all I'm looking for in my life is to get rid of all kinds of problems so that I too can be contented, then I share a goal in life with a cow. I'm too proud for that. So I have the ability to think, what am I supposed to achieve with my life? I have the ability to make a choice. Animals can't make a choice. Animals must do what their body tells them to do. And if an animal is going to be hungry, it's going to go eat. It has to look for food. Can you imagine an animal getting up one day and saying, I think I am going to diet today. I think I'm going to fast today. An animal can't do that. It's impossible. Why? Because it has a need hunger and a need for food, it's going to get food. Now, we can control what we eat. Whether we do so for weight control or whether we do so for Yom Kippur, for whatever reason, right? Our body wants food and we say, no, you're not going to get it. A person can find a wallet with money and no one has seen him pick it up, and he returns the money to its owner. He has the desire for money, right? But he will turn it to his owner because he has made a choice between right and wrong. Animals can't do that. Animals take revenge. You know, you irritate an animal and it'll attack you. A human being has the ability to withhold from attacking and taking revenge. And the Torah tells us that we're not allowed to take revenge. Even though Mesilas Yesharim says it's the sweetest feeling on earth is to get back at somebody who has harmed you. Right? But the Torah says, yeah, it's a very sweet feeling, but you're not allowed to do it. We have the ability to forgive someone who has offended us. Animals cannot forgive. And I think there's I addressed this in my book called Forgiveness. Right? That forgiveness is indeed a unique and noble human trait, and it's very difficult. But I think we have to understand a little bit about forgiveness. That if someone has offended you, if someone has harmed you, and you feel a great deal of anger and hatred toward him, and you carry a grudge or a resentment against them, and the Torah tells us, no, you cannot take any revenge. Right? That's difficult. But then the Torah says, don't carry any hatred of him in your heart. Now that's, not taking a revenge is one thing. But getting rid of the anger and hatred is another. But we have to understand what it means to carry a resentment against someone. And I've heard it said, was taught this by an alcoholic in recovery, who said, if you carry a resentment against someone, you are allowing someone whom you don't like to live inside your head without paying you any rent. And I think that's true. I think that carrying a resentment, the person whom I have a grudge against, he couldn't care less what I think about him. I'm the one that suffers for it. I'm the one that has headaches, and I'm the one that can't sleep at night because of the resentment. Why should I suffer because of his behavior? And so we have to understand that carrying a resentment and holding a grudge is like swallowing poison and expecting the other person to die from it. We are the ones who suffer. And so we have to learn to forgive. And that is not easy. But our sages have made it easier for us by telling us one level of forgiveness that I think we can all reach. And that is, when we say the Shema Yisrael at night before going to bed, there's a paragraph that says, we ask God, don't punish anyone because of me. Now that we can do. Because usually if I hit somebody's guts and I'm really angry at him for what he did to me, I may very well wish, I hope he drops dead and I hope this and I hope this. And our sages tell us, no, don't do that. You may not love him, right? But don't ask for his punishment. Don't ask for harm to someone who harmed you. That is one level of forgiveness that we can achieve. But we can achieve that because we have the ability to do that as human beings. Okay. We have the ability to do teshuvah. We've made mistakes. We're fallible humans. We have the ability to correct what we've done, to commit ourselves to never do it again. And in some cases, we have the ability to even make restitution or to apologize. And so we have the ability to do tshuva. That is a unique human ability. Animals don't have that. We have the ability to be humble. We may be bright, we may be multiple degreed, right? We have the ability not to have an inflated ego and to think that we're the most superior person in the world, right? But to keep our humility. Animals can't do that. We have the ability to look at our heritage and to think back what we have from previous generations. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our ancestors, all the way hundreds of years ago. We have a proud heritage. So what have I described? I've described what it is to be a mensch. What it is to be a human being. To have all of the abilities that we have that are unique human beings, and to use them. We have the ability to forgive. Do we do it? We have the ability to think of a goal and purpose in our life. Do we do it? We have the ability to improve ourselves and become our people. Do we do it? If we do it, then we are really implementing our unique abilities as human beings. And that is what my father told me, Zaya Mensch, and that is why we're telling the chosin under the chuppah and the kala, Yoitzer ha'odam, don't be behemoths, don't be wild animals, don't just be intellectual gorillas, but develop your midos. Develop your human traits. Because that's what makes you a person. Now, you see, if a husband and wife will practice the principles of being a adam, of being a human being, the chesed, the self-sacrifice for the other person, the sensitivity and considerate of the other person's feelings, setting yourself aside and putting the other person first. We talk about love. Western civilization doesn't know what love is. The word ahava, the Hebrew word for love, the nucleus of the word is hav, and hav means to give. And Rabbi Dessler has a beautiful essay in which he says people have this strange idea, right, that you give to someone whom you love. He says that's not right. You love someone to whom you give. And if you have the person who you don't like and you want to make a friend of him, do something for him. Do him a favor. Show him kindness and consideration. You'll develop the love. And if they come into the relationship with not what do I have in my agenda, what do I want from this relationship, but what can I give to this other person? What can I do to make this other person happy? How can I be sensitive to his or her feelings? That is the cement of a marriage. Let me give you one simple example, a personal example. My father was very well versed in medicine because every day he used to visit patients in the hospital and he would talk with the doctors, and over a period of time he accumulated much information, much medical information. Well, when he found out that he had cancer of the pancreas and that it had spread to the liver, he knew what that meant. And he said to me, this was back in 1973, he said to me, chemotherapy doesn't do anything for cancer of the pancreas, does it? I said, no. But it does cause a lot of unpleasant side effects. I said, yes. He says, why would do chemotherapy if it's not going to give you any better results? It's not going to prolong my life, and it's just going to make me more uncomfortable. What's the sense of doing it? And I said, you're right. There is no purpose to it. He says, okay, so we understand that we're not going to use chemotherapy. I said, yes, you're right. Meanwhile, my mother is talking to the doctor, and the doctor says, there's not much we can do for the rabbi. I mean, we can do chemotherapy. Maybe we could get another 3 months. And my mother says, 3 months? For 3 days you have to do it. Every day is precious. And so she came into my father's room and made it absolutely clear that you're going to take chemotherapy. After she left the room, my father said to me, I'm sorry that the doctor gave Mother some wrong information, because you and I know that it is not going to give it an additional 3 months. But he says, you know something? If I refuse the chemotherapy, then when I die, Mother will say, why didn't I insist? If I had put my foot down and insisted he would have gotten chemotherapy, he would still be alive today. And she'll feel guilty as to why she didn't insist. I don't want Mother to feel guilty. So, I'll take the chemotherapy. I know it's not going to help me at all. But it'll spare her from feeling guilty. And he said, you know, I've done many things for Mother. This gives me one opportunity to do a last thing. That is what I mean by sensitivity and consideration. Thinking, how can I make that other person feel better? What can I possibly do to eliminate some kind of discomfort from that other person? Now, that is being an Adam. That is being a mensch. And so we tell the Chosin and Kala under the chuppah, Yoid Seir HaAdam. Be a mensch to the finest degree that you can. Look away from your own needs. Of course we all have needs. I have my needs, you have your needs, we all have our needs. But I have to be able to put the other person first. This is the giving rather than the receiving. Sure, there will be receiving. Sure, we will get something out of the relationship. But that should not be the motivation. You know, we daven 3 times a day. And many of the authorities and sages' writings have asked, inasmuch as we believe that God knows our thoughts, He knows what's in our hearts, then why do I have to pick up a siddur and pronounce these words? Why do I have to verbalize it? Isn't it enough that I sit back and think about it? Right? He knows what I'm thinking. Why do I have to verbalize it? And so they give various reasons, but I'll tell you what I've come up with. I think that there are several verbalizations that some people have difficulty with. You know, some people have a difficulty in expressing their gratitude. You can see this with little kids. You have a mother with a 5-year-old, and somebody gives him a piece of candy or a lollipop, and mother says, "Say thank you to the nice man for the candy." And the kid goes, "Mmm." Now, Yanka, let's say, "Tell the man thank you for the candy." "Mmm." I don't know why that is. But there seems to be some kind of difficulty in expressing gratitude and saying, "I thank you." There's another difficulty that we have, and I've seen it, and I think you've observed it also, that during a courtship, the young man and the young woman may tell each other many, many times how much they love each other. Right? "I love you with all of my heart," etc., etc. Once they leave that chuppah, it's possible that for the next 60 years, nobody's going to say to each other, "I love you." Why? No, take it for granted. She knows I love her. I know he loves her. Why can't you say it? You have no problem saying it during the courtship. The third verbalization may be the most difficult of all, and that is to admit you were wrong. "I'm sorry, what I did was wrong. I apologize, I'm sorry." Now, because these things are difficult for us to say, what the sages said is, look, it may be difficult for you to say it to another person, even to a spouse, to a husband or wife. It'll be easier for you to say it to God. So 3 times a day, get in the habit of saying this to God. Because one of the themes that we see in tefillah, in prayer, is the love of God, right? Gratitude toward God, and confession that we were wrong and asking for forgiveness. So they said, get in the habit of saying this 3 times a day to God. And I thank you, God. I love you, God. And I'm sorry, what I did was wrong, and I'll try and do better. I apologize. And maybe if we get in the habit of saying this to God 3 times a day, we'll be able to tell it to our husbands and wives. I really believe that if these 3 simple phrases, I thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, but I was wrong, if they had been said more often, I'm sure that 50% of divorces could have been eliminated. But for some reason or other, these are human traits, not animal traits. These are human traits, and we lack in our humanity when we're not utilizing these to the fullest. So you see, we have to take a good look as to what are our expectations in the family. And I've talked about husbands and wives. But what about parents and children? And there's loads of problems with parents and children. And certainly in the 1960s, when there was this revolution, that young people know everything and older people know nothing. And therefore all the younger people are biologically more intelligent than their parents, and they know better than their parents, and therefore you don't have to respect your parents. That is totally anti-Torah. Yeah. Torah teaches us that wisdom is in the elders and that we respect our elders. But you see, I talked about the fact that we go into a marriage with our own agenda and our own needs. But then we bring a new person into the world, and we have a child. And we're bringing this child into a world that is fraught with stress and challenges and difficulties. And that child never asked to be brought into this world. And we brought the child into the world. we have a responsibility that now that child's welfare and happiness should become the prime focus of our lives. So it's not what I want as a husband and not what my wife wants as a wife, but what is going to be the best thing for this child in the long run. And for the child to feel that our greatest motivation in marriage is to give him or her the best opportunity to achieve a happy and productive life. And yes, when we discipline, and we discipline not out of anger, we discipline not out of frustration and not because they didn't listen to us. Children are very sensitive. They will know whether I am being disciplined because Father is angry because I didn't listen to him, or am I being disciplined because I did something that was harmful to myself. If children will feel that the parents' motivation is totally directed to their welfare, and that the parents are willing to set themselves aside for the child's welfare, there's nothing foolproof, but certainly a much better chance that the child will have a much healthier relationship with the parents. But unfortunately, we get pulled in so many directions, right? And there's so many absentee parents. And I can understand that it may be necessary for both parents to work in order to provide for the family, but still we have to find a way to let that child know, and the way to do that is to have that commitment. I want nothing else but the child's welfare. I am willing to sacrifice my own comforts. I'm willing to sacrifice my own future for the child's welfare. And I think if the children will feel that, then we'll have a better relationship between parents and children. So you see, what it comes down to is that we have to rethink of our attitude, rethink our attitude toward marriage, toward husband and wife, and rethink our attitude as parents to children. Because I don't know what it was like 100 years ago, but what it is like now, what it is like today, is that in so many situations, people are out for themselves, and they're motivated by what is going to be to maximize their own pleasure and their own comforts and their own contentment. Right? And husbands will pick this up, and wives will pick this up, and children will pick this up. And when one is motivated by selfish reasons, right, then we are living at an animal level. And I think that, first of all, we ought to be too proud to do that. Like I say, I don't want to share a goal of contentment with a cow. I want to have the pride and dignity of being a unique human being with all of the unique traits that I outlined that we have. No, we're not going to get this from movies, and we're not going to get this from television. Okay? We're going to have to think about it. And of course, if we do Torah study, then we're fortunate we get it from Torah. And one of our greatest Torah authorities, Reb Chaim Vital, said, of course a person must be very careful to be observant of Shabbat and observant of Kashrut, but you have to be even more careful to be observant of the human traits. How to avoid rage, how to be able to overcome how to be able to overcome anger with management of anger. It's not a simple thing, but it can be done. So what happens is that I think we can save our families, and we can bring down the divorce rate, and we can bring down the rate of alienation of children from their parents. But it's going to mean adapting a different attitude than what the Western culture is pushing on us, and that is that I am center of the world, and everything has to satisfy me. I'm going to have to think about, as was said before, Tomcha Shabbos is a beautiful example of how people are sacrificing from their own belongings, from their own time, from their own effort, for consideration of someone else. Not someone who's related to them, not someone who they even know. But the idea of chesed is foremost. But one of the great Torah authorities made this remarkable statement. He said a person did chesed all of his life. Superior chesed. But he was abusive at home. He was inconsiderate of his wife. And now he comes, after his lifetime, he comes up to heaven, and he expects that because of all the chesed that he did, they're going to open the doors wide and escort him into heaven. Take him right up to Avraham Avinu. Because he did so much chesed. And then he'll find that they slammed the door shut in his face. If you did not do chesed at home with your wife, then all of the chesed that you did outside is of no count at all. That is a powerful, powerful statement. Chesed and consideration and sensitivity has to begin at home. And if we show proper consideration and sensitivity between husband and wife, the children are very likely to pick that up and have that sensitivity toward their parents and toward siblings. So you see, my friends, it's a very simple thing. I think the observation is legitimate, that there's something wrong with the family. And I think that I may be on target, that the problem with the family is that the basis of the relationship is each person seeing what they can get out of the relationship instead of what they can give into it. If we can reverse that, I think we can have much healthier, wholesome families, which will give us all a great deal of nachas in our own relationship, and nachas in our children, and nachas in our grandchildren. Yeah? And this is a beautiful blessing, the greatest blessing that we can have, to be blessed with nachas in our families, nachas in our children, nachas in our children. Thank you for listening.